there anyone out there who still isn't clear about what doing drugs does? Okay, last time. This is your brain. This is drugs. This is your brain on drugs. Any questions? Is there anyone out?
This public service announcement was created by Drug Free America, a nonprofit organization that opposes illegal drug use and drug addiction. It may be familiar to you, and the first time you watched it, or even now, you may have experienced feelings of judgment and disgust, perpetuating the idea that all drug users are addicts, immoral, and weak. Messages like these heavily contribute to stigma around substance use, and although Canada may not be as blatant, our current legislation systemically pushes for the same message. As you are key stakeholders involved in drug policy, I'm here today to advocate for recommendations that aim to improve Canada's relevant laws, ensuring that substance users are treated as equal members in our society. Now, the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act, known as the CDSA, was enacted in 1996, and its regulations are administered by Health Canada. The purpose of the CDSA is to establish a legislative framework that controls access to substances that may produce harm to an individual or society when diverted to an illicit market. Although the CDSA has good intentions, there are a plethora of unintended negative outcomes that have had a significant disproportionate impact on certain racialized communities. For example, Indigenous peoples and Black Canadians face higher arrest, prosecution, and incarceration rates for drug offenses than majority populations, despite similar rates of drug use and selling among different races. This can have a rippling effect on individual and population level, generating stigmatizing behaviors that limits beneficial opportunities and increases risk of harm. As such, my first recommendation is for Health Canada to end criminal penalties related to simple possession and end all coercive measures related to simple possession and consumption, such as fines or forced treatment. Now, to clarify, simple possession refers to possession of a controlled substance for personal use with no intent to traffic. By criminalizing simple possession, the CDSA increases stigma by labeling people who use drugs as criminals, which multiplies the harms they experience and increases the risk of negative outcomes, even for people who use substances occasionally or for the first time. Systemic racism inherent in the criminal justice system basically seals the fate for Indigenous or Black people, where they may get trapped in the system and fall into a life of drug use that could have been otherwise averted. There must also be removal of coercive measures as well, because if they remain, it may amplify existing structural inequities when it comes to determining non-compliance for civil penalties. Additionally, the evidence on non-criminal but coerced or forced treatment is mixed, and success rates are typically low. Instead, substance use should be managed as a health and social priority, with a focus on the social determinants of health and not through criminal or civil sanctions. For example, developing a framework of diversion program options that establish pathways to health, rehabilitation, and recovery support, which can divert the route to the criminal justice system. Now, by providing this framework to frontline police, it will allow them to maintain their focus on public safety, targeting the illegal production of drugs from organized crime, while also participating in the decriminalization process. My other recommendation is that criminal records from previous offenses related to simple possession be fully expunged. This should be complete deletion, automatic, and cost-free. Criminal records expose people who use drugs to discrimination and makes it harder for them to be fully employed, which leads to further stigma and marginalization. This is amplified for Black and Indigenous peoples, where research shows that Black individuals who have indicated that they have a criminal record on an employment application have twice as much difficulty being called back for employment than non-Black individuals. Having this process cost-free ensures that it is accessible to everybody, regardless of socioeconomic status. Now, it is important to note that all these recommendations should be implemented through a consultation of a committee that centers people with lived and living experience of substance use. Diverse voices should be strongly and equitably represented, including but not limited to those specific groups such as Indigenous women, Black people, racialized people, those who are incarcerated, and migrants. In summary, my recommendations are to end all criminal penalties and coercive measures related to simple possession, instead creating a framework of options that diverts people away from the criminal justice system. Secondly, I recommend that criminal records from previous offenses related to simple possession be fully expunged to allow individuals an equitable chance to reintegrate into society. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation, and I hope to hear from you soon.